You are listening to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where illumination and inspiration is but a click away. With so many genre topics for you on everything that you need to know in life. We celebrate and share the people who have taken the journey before you and who are now here to serve you with their wisdom and their knowledge. The next show coming up is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Raising Your Gifted Children, our gifted children, right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sara, and today I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Hyacinth Jones, who is going to be coming on as a host on It's All About the Kids. I have been looking for somebody to do a show purely on children, and I'm so excited that she's going to be coming on and doing this. But today, and she's going to be starting next week, but today is all about her. Why is it all about the kids for her? Why did she take this journey? She used to be a secretary, a legal secretary in London and Brussels. What made her change her mind and go back to school and study so that she can work with kids? How does she work with kids today? What kind of program has she got? And what kind of shows is she going to bring to us on children? And remember, she's always open to receiving information from you and what you want to hear about the kids as well. So our children are our future. Our children are the future leaders. At the present moment, in the state of the world that it's in, we haven't done a very, very good job in laying out their future. So I think that the more we empower our children today, the more we water those beautiful seeds, nurture them, love them, guide them, listen to them, and encourage them, the more we're going to see a better future. Because it wasn't necessarily the way we were brought up because of that big word, expectations. Expectations on how we should bring up, where you go to school, who you mix with, the faith that you're in, everything else, rules and regulations that now need to change and just be codes of conduct and really let our children fly. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Hyacinth Jones. Welcome, my darling.
Hello. Hello. Everything you're saying there absolutely resonates so
Yeah.
deeply.
Well, kids, you have two young children yourself.
I do,
And
yes.
what ages are they?
I have a four and a half year old daughter and an 8-year-old son.
Wonderful. And I believe your son is going to a very unique boarding school, which we're going to talk about further on down the road. It's a
Wonderful.
kind of boarding school I would have loved to have gone to next to Hogwarts, most certainly. Only because Hogwarts, I love the kitchen and a little magic to do your bed and everything else. But I'm delighted that you're going to be joining us. Now, of course, you were on Kitty Adderley's show on Recovering
Yes.
the Whole of You, where you did talk about children and health and everything. And I know that you're going to probably love having Kitty on as well on your show. But legal secretary, what took you from being a legal secretary into the direction of children and wanting to go back to school to do something with kids?
What how do I start? I think at school I wasn't very academic. I was good at drama, I was good at English, and I was very good at getting my thoughts down on paper in draft form. But when it came to fine-tuning it, I didn't have that sense of focus and really also to have an understanding about what the education system is and how it was really a tool for my benefit for my future, because I had a very different understanding and feeling and connection to the way I felt my future was going to unravel in relation to what school was expecting from me. So it didn't really make much sense to me. So I trained quite early on in secretarial studies, and that was after I went and did theatre, media production, film, and all that kind of stuff. Very short courses, and anything that was long term academically just couldn't hold my attention. And the secretariat was short, and it was just really you learn it. And then I went and applied for jobs, and I was in the North London and Central London secretary working for an engineering firm, accountants, project management, office management. I mean, I loved the variety.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met my husband, who's living in Belgium, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to go and move along to Belgium and see what it's like working in Brussels. And then I did, and I got work there as a legal secretary. And I did that for 4 years before getting pregnant with my first child and realizing, and at that point, coincidentally, how the universe works, the company was going through some financial troubles. It was at the time of the big crisis, the recession, what have you. And my boss said, look, everybody's jumping ship. Why don't you come and join me in this other firm? I said, I don't know about that. One of the things he always told me is that, as a as a lawyer, and certainly the work that they were doing in the pharmaceutical industry is a lot of greed, and power games and everything like that. And there's so much reform that needs to be done, and it's hard work, and there's a lot of BS. So I said, bearing that in mind, I've actually decided that I don't want to be a secretary anymore. I want to do something that, I don't know, that is more rewarding, that leaves your mark in the world. And up until then, I had been doing this not theatre at the time, actually, theatre is new, but this volunteer work with a summer camp organisation in Italy through my husband. So I said, you know what, I'm really good with children. I keep hearing that a lot. So why don't I go into training to become a teacher? That's what I'll do, because, I'm supposed to be a teacher. Oh. So I said, okay, well, so first thing, I'm living in Belgium. We got married the following year after I moved here. And I was a mother, a student, and a teacher trainee. And I was learning in Flemish also. And their education system is also quite different out here. And there's just so much
communication.
Not miscommunication, but just I want to say that like just missing each other.
Right.
This is what the image that I start with the word miss, but this is how my brain works basically. Right. And it's not supported. I have a lot of questions, and I think a little bit abstract and out of the box. And it was really so obvious to me that the system, at that stage, it was really just, learn what it is that we have to teach you, get your marks, then you can change the world.
Right. Very robotic.
There we go. And I thought, well, I was already in my 30s, and a lot of the information that I was getting to on the psychological side, child development, even the philosophy and the pedagogy, the didactics, was all really very interesting to me as a parent. And as a student, learning about myself, the way I think, and then also as a teacher. And I thought, well, I want to specialize in this. I've got so many questions. I don't want to go anywhere else for the next 3 years. I just want to stay with this. And I don't want to teach English and IT just, because I want to find out, what is the way that they learn? What is it? Why are they here on earth? What do they want to do? And, but there's no space for this kind of thinking, this kind of, too open, cannot be to be boxed down.
Yeah.
So
so regimented, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I actually had a burnout, and I was having like a nervous break that like really inside, just having to open the computer and think about, and my Dutch had to be perfect because I was going to be teaching Flemish children. So, I would be, oh my goodness, I'd already improved so much. And then I got to the point, I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to speak as a native person. I was already almost 30 when I got here and started learning the language. I'm doing quite fine. Let me be able to express from my heart and connect from my heart. That's all I care for.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about academics and, and talking about ABC 1, 2, 3 and like that. So anyway, I closed that chapter, and I said, so what can I do? 35-year-old woman, child in tow, husband, household, not interested in doing a BA. What can I do? So I looked around and I saw life coaching spoke to me, metaphysics, child development. I discovered aware parenting, a Swiss American child psychologist, has done a wonderful course. I met somebody here in Belgium who spoke English, and I learned so much from her. So basically, that's where it went.
You
know,
allowed
and
you allowed the universe to lead you where you needed to go.
and everything that I've learned, I've applied to my children, to my husband, to myself. I think the turning point for me was when I sent my son at 4 years old to a kindergarten boarding school in the Czech Republic. And I said, okay, so he's away and I'm not sending him away to do the growing spiritually, and I'm just going to stay here, stuck. I need to learn and fill up and be, and I came across a lady called Carol Tuttle who wrote this thing called The Child Whisperer, and it's about energy profiling. So you look at all nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, and how they translate into metaphysical terms as air, water, fire, and earth.
Mm-hmm.
And how you can observe them in your personality, in your features, in your speech, in your movement, in your pregnancy, so that we all have this language and this manual on how to be supported. So I started to apply that, and it really helped me to understand him, to get a grip, and just to be intentionally loving and supportive to everybody in that natural movement. So recently I devised a theatre workshop that I do with young people, and the theory is the 4 elements. So I give them an overview of what it is that they feel they are, and then we do improvisation, and then we come up with a plot as well. And it's the story is always how we interact and misunderstand each other, and how do you overcome that.
Right.
And then it's layered up. So last year I did just like one element, the most dominant in you, but actually we're all 4 of them. This year I was able to say, okay, so what's the next layer, and work with them really, really deep and enthusiastically in that. And that was really a special treat.
That really resonates with me because as my spiritual practice, I'm a true colors coach, which is the 4 key personalities. The way we interact, the way we perceive the information that is giving is based on what key personality we are. But you align it along with the 4 elements.
Right.
And there's also, when you look at numerology, everything shows a succinctness, and it shows where our dominant strengths are and where our weaknesses are. And there are places that you can bring your weaknesses up, and there's other places you just need to recognize that is not the weakness. Don't even bother about it, just concentrate on the strength. And by understanding these things, and especially understanding elements, because everything around us, earth, wind, fire, water, everything, we are it's all around us, it's what everything is made up of. And to think that the elements are separate from us just because we're flesh, right, is wrong. So I'm very glad that you're teaching those elements, because it is kind of the source of us in many ways, of how our rivers run deep, and how our heart flame flows, and fires. And I love your journey, because this is, I always say to people, this self-discovery media is about people's redirect. Honoring themselves. You were doing a good job. You were obviously making good money. It was okay, but you knew there was something more for you, and you knew that there was something more, that you hadn't found your meaningful purpose. And now, through the willingness of taking the journey, you've taken that meaningful purpose. And we have somebody in the picture here. Hello. Who have we got here?
This is my son.
Hello.
He didn't put his face in the camera on purpose. He's trying to look what it is, how I'm connected up here. No, but you can't hear her. But Sarah's asking. Yes, there is another one. Is that what you wanted to hear? Oh, I see.
Hello, how are you? And this young boy is going to go, hello. Hello there. How are you today?
Good.
Good. And I hear you're going back to boarding school next week. Right? And you go to a very special school. You're so lucky. I wish I'd gone to a school like that when I was young. It sounds like so much fun. We're going to be talking about that school because I think it's a very good school and should be around the world. So you're very, very lucky to be able to go to it.
He's just getting in as much play and packing his toys as well that he would take with him, because
Right.
he knows it's going to be that's the hardest thing for him, is missing us. He's a real homebody.
Oh yes, definitely.
So
Yeah, boarding school is
I'm
wonderful,
proud
but
of him. Yeah, so I'm proud of him that he's close. Thank you.
I mean, it's hard on, this, I think, a lot of people in North America don't really understand boarding school. And of course, in Europe, it's a very common thing, for kids to go to boarding school. I went to boarding school at 8. My brother and sister went at 5 and 6. And, it's a lot that we learn about ourselves, but it's actually quite the norm in Europe. And of course, for you, you've chosen this boarding school for several reasons, which I think is, why don't we just dive right into it, of what this boarding school offers that's so special, that you send your son to it?
Well, the basis is that we're all spiritual beings, that need to understand ourselves is universal knowledge, and that's about how you take care of sleeping, how you maintain your own these kind of things. These are like the principles, and it's founded on the values that a lady called Sri Mataji has expounded. She was around in the 1970s and created something called Sahaja Yoga meditation. And so, my parents, my mother and my husband's parents, for example, learned a lot from her firsthand in the 80s. So what's happened is that those adults who have grown up with this kind of way of life, of learning about the chakras, understanding how the things around you are a reflection of your inner state, and then also how to through your meditation, how to bring about that balance and to recognize again the elements and what meditation is. They decided that it was important to pass onto young people, to their children. So a small group of people started a school in India, and then another school started in Czech Republic, and then I can't remember, maybe 15 years ago, Italy started. Or Italy started. So yeah, so I've seen in our circle, at least, there are a lot of young people who have been through the system and now integrate society, if you like, which for me, I have to say, is one of the things that I feel I want to be very conscious of, that you can have, this is the kind of issue that I have with schools on the whole, is that you go into one way of, you wear your uniform, you have your headmaster, your teachers, your school, your everything like this, but you're your school, and then that's that school, and that's that school. And there was this organization that sent us around to different schools, and I was like, well, this is a lovely aspect of this school, and this is a lovely aspect of this school. So what people generally tend to do is merge them and then create a new alternative school. But what I believe is what we should be doing more of is interacting in the schools themselves. And having a couple of lessons a week in another school, in another environment, having the children themselves invite the other children over, and and teachers also cross learning from different
well, that's life,
ways of doing
it?
the same thing.
That is life, learning cohesiveness and collaboration, and that just because someone does it differently doesn't mean it's wrong. Again, going back to those 4 perspectives, if you get to learn all of those 4 perspectives, then you learn to be able to see it from other people's points of view, and you don't get so in people's face because they don't see it the way you see it, right? I think it's teaching respect, teaching tolerance, teaching a way of communication, teaching a way of listening and learning and adapting. You know, it's not just, oh, it's my way. No, because you're talking to somebody who sees it differently.
That's
You
right.
need to change your language. So you change your language so that person can understand what you're saying. It's just like, well, if they don't get me, hard luck. So if they're going to these different schools and they're learning the different techniques and the different, it's really rather like, you know, when you have an orchestra, you try out every instrument until you find the one that's yours, right? But the orchestra has all
That's
those
it.
beautiful
That's it.
instruments
That's it.
in it, not just one instrument. And everybody has a significant role in there. And I think the more we learn that versatility and adaptability and adaptability, you know, the more we would actually less be about borders, you know, and understand the fluidity of life and how it flows in everything, and just being able to allow that flow. We can teach our kids this now, instead of, you know, having to be 30, 40, 50, 60, the cosmic 2x4, and then having that redirect in life and having to learn it then the hard way. If we could teach our kids now, look at the kind of future, look at the kind of world we could have.
There you go. So that's also my motivation, that I recognize a lot of leadership is missing in our, you know, in our teaching system, in our education system, you know, and in our parenting also. We kind of tame and domesticate our children, able to, you know, rationalize with them. So it was,
it's about conformity all the time, isn't it? You know, obedience and conformity, which, you know, which it's not, don't question. It is. I've told you it is. Don't question. And we want our kids to question. We want them to question, not become sheeple. You know, as they say, the best leader is those that creates other leaders. That's what we need, other leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now and you have...
I remember
yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember my son also telling me...
We're having a wobbly here.
That he was bored or something. And I said, okay, so what happened? I said, oh, exactly what happened. Like after break, we all just had to go to the bedroom and play with our toy. And
what
would you rather do then? And he said, well, I think we should be given fruit. You know, you should be able to play wherever we want. I said, well, right. Can you hear me?
We had a wobbly there. We were losing what you were saying a little bit. So we got about him being bored, and then we went into a wobbly.
So he was bored and was complaining about, after the break time, they had to go and immediately start doing some drawing or something in their room. And I said, well, what would you rather do? Then he said he wants to have fruit, and he wants to be able to play outside, not just, you know, in a limited space. So I said, write it down. So he wrote it down, and I said, okay, and what else is there? So I had to coax him, and then there were a couple of things. And I said, okay, so you write that down. And I said, I know you've got nice handwriting. Can you read back what you've written? He read it back. I said, okay. Now, which of the teachers do you feel comfortable with? I want you to go and talk to them about this. Right. And then he was like, what? And I said, but then he came up with a name, and it was the principal, because it's his aunt. And I said, okay, well, good for you. Go and, you know, talk to her. And I said, and listen to what it is that she says, you know. And he's not really that kind of forthcoming person, but I'm very happy that, you know, he trusted me to guide him in that experience. And it's just a little example of this leadership.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, why are kids so timid and scared? And I think most of it is because they haven't had the encouragement. Some of it is the nature of them. But I think a great deal of it is they haven't had the permission. Right? And, you know, because it's so much about this children should be seen and not heard is still in there. You know, not as extreme as it used to be 100 years ago, but still there, or 50, 60 years ago. It's, we still think we know better.
Right.
The youngest child I interviewed was 10, who'd already written a book. And I was blown away by her articulation and her just clarification on life. You know, simple things. If you're doing something that makes you unhappy, stop and go and find something that makes you happy. And it's like, why is it so simple? But we love to complicate it so much, right? So our children are so wise. They just haven't learned the knowledge yet on how to use their wisdom. But if we listen to their wisdom, we're going to be learning from them.
Definitely.
Tell me about Telmana Consulting.
Telmana Consulting. So this is the name of the kind of agency, the agency for positive change in the education and in parenting. And this is the name I came up with. I'm born on a Sunday in April, and in the yoga that I learn, Sunday is the chakra that's in the forehead, and the stone is the diamond. And also the stone for April is the diamond. And in all the coaching that I followed, I seem to have these, you know, like clarity, non-judgmental, solid kind of stuff. So I kind of figured that the act that I want to bring forth is the diamond. And then I thought, well, diamond, that sounds quite cheesy. I wonder how it's pronounced in other languages. And then so I discovered the word taimana, which is a Maori pronunciation for the word diamond. So they say taimana. And it being on the other side of from where I am, on the other side of the world, I just loved the fact that it involves, it's like a big hug that everybody's included. And I don't know if you saw the film The Whale Rider.
Yes, I did. That's going back into the 90s, I think. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And that's also an act of me that I can't settle for surface appearances, that I'm really a deep sea diver, and I really need to know the composition of a person, and to resonate with what motivates them, you know, and what is it that they have to heal to be all that they can be.
Right.
And I've come away from that being, you know, I used to have this focus on the lack, and I've done a lot of self work, and I start to understand, okay, so the positive side of it is that I can actually just support a person in the essence of who they are, and, you know, not be so concerned with, okay, but, you know, why do you do that? What?
Right. Well, that if you focus, what we water grows, right? So if we're constantly pointing out the faults of people, that's where the attention is. If we talk about the gifts of people, you know, the treasures that they have, the treasure they are, and we water that, and that will grow. And, you know, the negative sides of all of us, which is our yin yang, will be less so, because when we step into the consciousness of love, which resonates at a 580, 600 hertz, it's a higher frequency, a higher vibration. The more you live in that vibration, the less harm you can knowingly do to anyone else. It's against your consciousness. So if we can water that consciousness, by watering that consciousness and allowing a person to blossom, we don't focus on the thorns, right? We know that they can prick you. We focus on the beautiful flower and the essence of that flower and all that it can mean, because look what can be made from that flower, right? The oils and the smells and the healing and the rose water. I mean, so much stuff can come from that. But as a society, we've got stuck on the thorns of people. And we're worrying about the thorns all the time, and we're forgetting to see the beautiful bloom and the beauty of them. And the more we concentrate on our children, on how they're blooming in life and how their essence and the ripple effect that it will have, we will have a much kinder and more caring and more loving society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've come to understand also that those of us who are concerned with the thorns in the scope of the work with the elements I do tend to be more earth oriented
Mm-hmm.
and temperaments, let's say. And that's because they have a gift to see perfection.
Yeah.
And when they are not honored and respected for this gift, then it becomes overly critical.
Yeah.
And always pointing out the bad, the bad, the bad. So we've created a whole education system and work ethic system that's all based on, you know, being able to point out what is wrong, you know, and we pride ourselves on that. And it can be a headache for
you have to
yeah.
understand administrative people and teachers' curriculums are predominantly earth, or in the true colors, gold people, because they're the structure builders. They're not the blueprinters, they're the structure builders. So they build those curriculums from the standard they want to see, and they don't take into consideration all the other elements.
That's difficult for them. Yeah. Indeed. So it's like now the time is, you know, it's shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need, you know, new blood, new fresh energy, new ideas, innovation. And I think the beauty of the times that we're in now is that we can incorporate everything. You know, you don't need to be too much of one thing.
Right.
You know, you really can incorporate one thing. And this is another thing that I wanted to be able to do, where I had difficulty in structuring myself in my education and grasping, you know, focusing and grasping what this is all about. It would have been handy to have a mentor who was able to see that, okay, so, you know, your way of being unstructured is actually, you know, you're a random and spontaneous and social type of energy. So we're not going to contain it, we're going to understand this, and we're going to understand, you know, where it is that you need structure or you feel you, and I'm going to help you in a fun way to do that.
How to harness it, right? Not restrict it, how to harness that energy so it could be more prominent. Yeah.
But to learn also the because for an air type of person, it's the structure and the, you know, the ground, and then the other way around for the earth type of person to be, you know, just spontaneous and go with the flow. They need a lot of
Yes.
they can be very rigid.
Extremely difficult for them. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So this is one of the things that I do, and now I'm going into a project in January with a lady, a lovely Belgian lady actually, and she's working with young people who are not in the same mode as the rest of the academics in the school, and are wanting to leave or wanting to, you know, do their studies on a longer basis. But there comes with a lot of stigma also, and self-doubt. And so she's teaming up with this IT company who is actually fed up of the graduates that they're getting to come and work for them, and is starting their own school. So they're going to bring the hard skills, and they've asked her and myself to come in and do the soft skills.
Excellent.
And this is one of the things that I wanted to be able to find and assess, and then have them kind of understand who they are and be okay with it. The reason why so-called discipline is difficult for you is because you're this type of energy, you know. So if you do want to learn structure or something, then you have to connect some kind of purpose or meaning, and do it in a fun way, and, you know, don't beat yourself up. And this is what I'm hoping to bring to the table.
You know, the other thing about, you know, the structured community is that they see people from their point, you know, from what their need and what they think should be there, but they don't see always or understand people for really the gift they are. And, you know, even a person, you know, the green personality, the water is chaotic.
Right.
It flows. It's very hard to contain it. You can put it in a bowl, but, you know, it sometimes overflows. And let's look at the current, look at the oceans. You know, it's amazing. It can hold this massive ship, but it can also, if it gets pissed off, glug 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 glug. You know, so that is the chaos of a green personality, of the water a sign. And, you know, the fire is passionate about what they do, but a flame cannot sustain for so long. And that's the thing, is when for the flames to come out, and when for it to be the ambers, you know, when for it just to be, you know, waiting to come out, because you can't live in by the flames all the time. And of course, the blue, the sky, the air sign, which you can see around me, is I'm a screaming blue. You know, the air is another one of these things that is very hard to contain. It needs to be fluid. And I think one of the most important things and the hardest thing for the earth sign to understand is fluidity, because everything needs to flow. And if everything in our blood, our body, our oxygen, our ideas, everything is flowing. And that permission to allow that flow of creativity, that flow of wonderment, that flow of no question is too crazy. And build up that wondrous, you know, wonderment of life, which I think we've curtailed a great deal, you know, because it's become so regimented. And we need that creativity. We need it in the world for the solutions to what we're doing to the world. Right?
I really agree. And it connects also back to psychosomatic problems or dis-ease that we actually experience in not being able to express or to be understood. Really causes a lot of the stagnation that we're seeing, you know, and discomfort and dis-ease and
anxiety.
Anxiety.
Yeah. And what anxiety are we imposing on our kids because of our anxiety or our anger or our frustration? You know, our kids pick that up and they take it on, but they don't really know what they're anxious about. They're just anxious about the environment, you know, what's going on in their arena. And so teaching them to handle which is their anxiety, which isn't, what to do with it, because look at how many suicides we see today for kids that are so anxious because they've been curtailed and put in a box instead of. I was
going to mention that very thing.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that subject alone is many podcasts. Because it's so, it's, the numbers are quite scary, isn't it? And the fundamental is a sense of not belonging or no one cares.
This is, I feel, kind of, you know, they say the voice of your parents becomes your inner voice as an adult, you know. So this is a part of the work that I do with the parents. It's really to become conscious and intentional in what it is that you're expressing, that you're putting out there. And a lot of the time, you know, there's just been so much neglect and harm. I was talking to a 20-something-year-old girl from Brazil, volunteer at the camp I was just at, and she was talking about, she was not talking about it. I just sensed that there's something retained in her. And we had a moment where I was just able to open her heart, just talk, you know, candidly. And she spoke about how they used to, you know, how lovely her parents are, but they used to get beaten as children.
Yes.
You know, and I'm like, well, you're not the only one. I actually recall when my mom and my father stopped hitting me, you know, and how as an adult now, there are so many things that I realize that you're saying that, okay, so which of this is mine and which of it is coming from my parents?
Yes.
You know? And I'm really intentional now in the conversations I have with my children. It's like, you know, I'm angry because I haven't slept. And if you don't move now, I'm going to shout because I'm angry. It's got nothing to do with you, you know? But we need to see some
and that's learning them to be sensitive to your feelings too, right? And don't take it on. Mum's feelings are that way. What can we do to help mum feel better? Instead of you imposing your feelings on them, you're inviting them to either get out of the way or what can I do for you, mum?
That's it. And also I have, I get a slowdown and a kind of like a depression when I have sugar and milk and bread. And I'm just really in this low energy, sad space, you know. Oh, why do I have to tell you things 3 times? Nobody really listens to me, you know.
No
And
bread
then
and
so
butter
they,
pudding for you.
yeah, no. So they started, yes, I did. Oh my goodness, this is what it is. And then it helps, just to what's the remedy? What's the remedy?
But that's the thing, our kids very often see things that we're unable to see. And if we give them permission to speak candidly, they really have an awful lot to contribute. And we have a lot to learn from them, don't we?
Mm. We do. We do. I always say that, we've been on the earth, however many 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years more than them when they're born.
Right.
But they're coming from a place of absolute innocence.
Yes.
Inner innocence,
Mm-hmm.
in the term of being clean and pure.
Yes.
And also having an inner sense. I'm hungry,
Yes.
I cry. I'm
Right.
angry, I stamp something, but there's no judgment, there's no self-judgment on themselves.
Right.
They have a PhD in spontaneity and innocence,
Yes.
and they're there to reflect to us how we feel about the things that they do, because basically reacting to them in the way that is we have absorbed, that was reacted to us at that age.
Yeah.
And we're not conscious anymore of that, and we often say, you made me angry,
Mm-hmm.
or you did this. No, I've come to understand they are putting the buttons to see the real us, to help us deal with our inner emotions that they can sense and we are ignorant to. And the best thing that we can do is to teach them how to overcome, because a lot of the time we're just suppressing and saying that, well, I don't do anger, now it's sadness. I can just soldier on, and this is duty and I have to do this. But it's okay, but what does anger look like, and how do you get over it actually? When
how do you
dad comes
it before it spends you? Yeah, and how do you teach a child to have that anger? And sometimes it's just go and scream at the world, stamp it out. I remember we got my son a punching bag, and he and his dad would hit the punching bag, find that outlet that doesn't become an outlet on someone else.
That's right.
I mean, all these emotions are meant to be spent, aren't they? It's because if we get stuck in any emotion like anger, that causes the dis-ease within the body, and the body's chemistry changes, like the water experiment. Anger and hate changes the water to black, love changes it to crystallization of high frequency. So the more we're sending something with love, but we have to validate the emotions. A brilliant movie on that, which I'm sure you've seen, is Inside Out. Did you see that movie a few years ago?
Yes.
Which I think is just perfect, talking about our emotions and the permission. Brilliant. And it was put together by two dads who observed their children, right? Somebody who paid attention to how the children were feeling in order to understand it. What a great gift. The kids taught them. And then they made millions off the movie. But
I'm sure they'll share.
Yes. But I've actually introduced that movie a lot to psychiatrists and psychologists and things like this, and they go, "Oh, thank you. This is half of our work done here. Watch the movie, folks."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, the bit that speaks to me volumes about the work I do and everything that we're talking about here, about these emotions, actually, is this film Moana. In Europe we call it Vaiana. And there's a moment when the stone, a precious stone, has been taken from the heart of an island, and it has to be returned by this young girl who has been chosen by the sea. So the sea takes her, and she climbs up this big mountain, and then she has to put the stone, return it back into the heart of this earth. But it's just empty, it's just a space. And then she looks across, and then she sees a volcano, and it's this volcano image of this very angry I mean, you don't know if it's a woman or a man, but it's
Right.
very angry. And then she says that, but hang on, that's that that's the shape of the person that's here. She was green and lovely, and the
Uh-huh.
stone has been taken from the core of her, and she's angry, and she's been roaming around for thousands of years,
Looking for her
angry
heart.
to get this back.
Mm.
So she moment. This is my favorite scene in the song that she sings, and then she goes back, and she makes that record, asks the sea to part because the sea is on her side, and then the sea parts and she says, bring her to me. So she starts to walk, and you've got this monster on the other side, volcanic, who can see this shining glimmering stone that and this young girl, beautiful young girl, just walks so calmly, and she says, I know who you are. This is not who you are. They've stolen the heart from inside you, and you've forgotten who you are. And I'm not afraid to return this back to you and be who you are. And then she puts the stone back, and I was just like, wow, imagine
Yes.
just to have that composure, that compassion, that understanding, to walk towards the volcano when your child, when your mother, when your anybody is, because
Yes.
something is deeply hurting within them.
Yes.
But to have that sense of purpose and understanding and peace, on that, it is to be resonating on that level of peace and love that you spoke about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where you're able to just go and to restore. And it just, from that, it's just magic for me. That's like my favorite part of the whole film. It's like it's an essence of everything that I
Yes.
that I am.
And basically, it doesn't matter how corny it is. Love is the answer. Love is all.
Absolutely not.
Right? It is all about love. It's about love of self, love of who we are, what we do, what's our purpose in life. It's a love about our families, our community, our planet. It's all about that love. And we know what grows in love, but we know what dies in hate. And the yin and yang of life isn't
Right.
hate and love, right? It's more about not what we have and what we do have, appreciation for the lack of, or feeding the lack. So the balance is there.
That's
Right?
right.
And when people are angry or when they're hurt, it's because there's a lack of love or lack of acceptance of who they are. For so many people, I wrote an article many, many years ago, Only the Lonely, how you can be in a crowd speaking to people, but no one sees you, no one hears you, because people are speaking to a persona of you and not speaking to the
Right.
core of you. And I think so many children are spoken at, but they're not spoken with. And we need to bring that with conversation. I'm interested in what you say. I hear you. I want to listen. I want to understand. And then we would open our children up with that permission to be themselves and not an expectation of what they should be. We know that doesn't work, right? We just look at us. Somewhere along the line, you've got to break that expectation and say, no more, take these shackles off.
Absolutely.
So let's do it to our kids now. So you work with parents, you work with kids, because you can't just work with the kids. You have to work with the parents. So the parents, again, the yin yang, right? Everybody has to be on the same page in order to really make it work, because the kids don't always have that strength to go back and say to the parents, this is what I've learned. This is what I'd like you to do. And a parent can go around, how let the cats well up, unless you're teaching the parents too, to see their child in a different way, and a child to see the parents in a different way, and to find that interaction on a way that everybody can hear themselves. That's when you have the strength of the family, the interlocking that's so strong, because everybody's willing to listen to one another. And it's not about the hierarchy. We're guardians, we're custodians of our children. We don't own them, they're not our property. And we have to teach them as much as we can, but we've got to be willing to learn, because there's so much to learn from my kids along the way. So what kind of shows are you going to be bringing to us? What's on your itinerary?
Okay, well, the subject is, it's all about the kids. and I want to explore what that kind of evokes, what kind of reaction that evokes for us, because I don't know, how was your upbringing when you were growing up? Was it all about you? You know, that's what's really important for us to be aware of, because whatever we can be conscious of how we feel, we're going to be more intentional in interaction that we have with our children or the young people in our life. So it's really wanting to start us having a good relationship with ourselves, and to forgive and understand that mistakes happen, and that each of us are the right type of parent for ourselves. And that's where it starts, to nurture, celebrate, and parent this inner child within us, so that we really can genuinely be 100% present and real and honest and open to learning from the young energy, this beautiful dynamic gift of young people in our life. And a lot of us are grown-ups also and are still very young in our energy. So you know, our society is quite segregated with our ages, you know, so it's really about having children around. It's really learning how to respect and have dignity for everything, you know, and to have that awe and that wonderment, and the more cooperation you're going to, and you're going to be able to connect with them when you are in touch with yourself.
I think it's a priority, isn't it? Because we parent from what we know. And most of the time, and the common denominator I found in all the shows I do is everybody has an injured child inside of them. Everybody has a child that felt that they was not heard or not seen. If you're parenting from that point of view, that means you're imposing that child that insecurity, and that child will pick that insecurity up, and so on and so on. So it is imperative that we nurture our inner child and learn to love that inner child, because then we will bring that love forth to our children. And I think that's the first step, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you've already got children. Do the work on you. Find the love within you, because then that resonance of who you are, that love of self, will most certainly, you know, ripple effect over your children and the way that you raise them. So you make a very good point there. Tend to your inner child first.
And it's a lot easier said than done. I know for many of us parents, with a career, with a household, you know, going backwards and forward to the school, it's really not simple. It's really not easy to carve out this time for yourself and to address all of this deep inner work that needs to be done. So, and having to face that, kind of setting the trend. Though there are a number of men also who are really connected and in touch with this and are leading the way as well. I learned from my brother and lots of male friends that I provide this space to reflect and to accept what has happened, and to understand that there are some wounds. And there's an interesting lady, now you talk about who am I going to interview. I don't know if I can manage to get hold of her, but I've been following her for some years now, and that's Bethany Webster, who talks about healing the mother wound. And that's extremely deep and very powerful and profound, the work that she does there. And then there's another lady, she wrote The Women Who Run with the Wolves. Perhaps I won't get her, but I will perhaps some of the things that she has written that really helped me as a woman and as the daughter of an Abli, to come to terms with a lot of things, to make me stronger and to really take on this role of leadership and emancipation, dare I say it. And who else? I mean, everybody has got a story in relation because we were all children, you know, at one
Yes.
point or other. So
It's healing that
I think
end
I
of
will
world.
just have to,
Yeah, go with,
right.
yeah, you're opening up the doors and you're sending out the invitation. And, you know, I mean, I've got the honor of introducing you to a few wonderful people in London, as I'm going to actually meet you there, which is wonderful when I'm over there. And there's a couple of people I know that you're going to have a fabulous synergy with, and, you know, that are working with kids in their own way. And I think this is something we finally got to understand, not only our inner child, but also how not just valuable, you know, or what gems, you know, the diamonds in the rough our children are. And we're looking today at prodigies around the world, or kids that are so enormously talented. And it's just God-given talent, but it's up to us to respect the gifts that they've been given. And as I said, water them, nurture them, let them grow, they're meant to be. We're there to guide them, to make sure they don't go completely too far to the left or the right, that they, you know, can expand out, but moving forward. And if we're willing to learn from our kids and not pull the hierarchy, you know, I'm your mother, I'm your father, what I say go, or I'm your teacher, you know, and be willing to learn from my kids as well, and be open and absorb, what a beautiful synergy that will be there. And it's so needed. So I'm looking forward to all the people that you're going to be bringing to us, you know, plus sometimes just your own wisdom on your own show. And, you know, the people that I have here in Self Discovery Media as hosts are people that very often have never done shows before, because I know you're going to be a rookie on this one, but you bring a core value that you can't, you know, that not everybody has. You bring a passion and a conviction for what you do. And it doesn't matter that you've not done this before, because you're bringing you, and all the other stuff will just work its way out. So I appreciate you joining us. And I look forward to all that you are going to bring. And I know that it's going to come from a good core value place, which is really important. So welcome aboard Self Discovery Media. And thanks for joining our family here. But in the meantime, your new show will start next week. It's all about the kids. And your first show will be kind of about you and your teachings and what you want to impart. And then you'll have your interviews. And, you know, people can also get hold of you if they have suggestions or have questions. So how can people reach out to you to ask those questions? Also, your site, so people can go to your teachings and look at what else that you offer. Would you spill it all out for us, please, love?
Sorry, I have two websites. My personal one is hyacinthjones.com.
Can you spell
And
Hyacinth
then,
for people, please?
excuse me?
Can you spell your name for people,
Of
please?
course, yes. So Hyacinth, Jones, JONES.com. And the like corporate website is Taimana, TAIMANA Consulting, CONSULTING.com. And there you will find contact details, even telephone number on my website, I think, to get hold of me. And I'm very open to LinkedIn, especially. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. Yes, and on Facebook also. If you find me on there. I'm getting my head around the whole social media handle thing. I have to say, I haven't quite got it. You know, Twitter and everything. I'm there, but I'm just not active.
Yeah.
And I do make an effort to respond to things when I see them. So you will have to be a bit patient with me. I'm running a household and bringing up children, but it's real life. Yeah. I'm there. I'm dedicated, and I would love to hear from anybody, from everybody.
Yeah. And, you know, everything is about interaction and patience as well. And so if anybody wants to take any of your courses or want to reach out to you as a parent, you know, whether they need guidance with their child or their inner child, you know, you're there to help. And also the theatre thing, which I hope you're going to talk more about, you know, in your own show. about what that's all about, because through theatre, my kids did theatre, especially my two girls, and although they didn't go off into doing anything with it per se as theatre, it taught them and gave them confidence to do public speaking or to be able to interact or express themselves. So it's again another format, like music is, and art and things like this, of expression and confidence building, which is needed. And the funny thing is you mentioned, our child are born with inner sense. And in that innocence, they're incredibly confident. I call it the knowingness. They're born with the knowingness, what they need to know when they need to know it. And then we kind of impose these rules, regulations, and this and that, and suppression. Now they become insecure of what they can do, what they can trust, their inner voice compared to the bombardment of voices they get on the outside. How do we keep that inner voice flame alive so that they can always come back to that center and listen to it, because that is their truth? So it's a very important subject, and I'm looking forward to what you're going to be doing on it. So thank you so much, Hyacinth, for being here. And yes, we've had a couple of technical things, folks. We've got to remember it's internet radio. We're at the mercy of the internet, and sometimes we get wobblies. So that's the way it goes. See yourself through the wobblies. Stay with us, because the content is always worth listening to. So Hyacinth will air on the 23rd of September with her own show, and guest lineup will come as it comes. And please do support her and listen to all that wonderful wisdom. I can tell you from experience, people who embrace their redirect, embrace their instrument, their calling, are the best teachers, because they're teaching you what they need to discover about themselves, right? And so this is coming from somebody who's been willing to take the journey, and in that discovery wanting to pass that information on, and it beats a manual book anytime. So thank you for your teachings. And it is all about the kids. It is, right? They're everything. They really, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Mine are 30s to 37. And it doesn't matter how old they are, they're still always your babies, they're always your kids. But it gets to a point where they become the teachers. And so let's encourage that in them when they're young, that they never have to fear being that teacher, because that's how the cycle of life goes around, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Some parting words for us, love.
The show that I'm going to air is all about the kids. And I want the time that we spend together to give that feeling, that cozy, wonderful feeling of honesty and sincerity, that, when you say that it's all about the kids, that we really can understand and appreciate that, because we have nurtured and are fully in touch with our own kindness, innocence, and divinity.
In a nutshell, right there. Kindness, innocence, divinity, all of that. It's the channel that's being opened up for us, and we need to pay attention to the message that's coming from those channels, because that's where we're going. So we need to be able to willing to download and tune in and expand our minds and listen more to our hearts and our souls and our spirits. So thank you so much, Hyacinth. Welcome to Self-Discovery Media.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
And to everyone else out there, please tune into our shows. It's all about the kids with Hyacinth. And if you have anything that you would love her to cover, you can contact her, or you can contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com, and be glad to forward it on to her. If there's a particular subject that you really feel that needs to be covered, we will do our best to make sure it is. Until next time, folks, be kind to your inner child. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show and were inspired. Come and visit us at selfdiscoverymedia.com and see what other shows we have for you. And please do visit our selfdiscoverycommunity.org and see how you can be a part of giving back. Thank you very much.